Naruto possessing the Rinne Sharingan is special, as this dojutsu has only ever been wielded by the Ten Tails, or those who have taken its power. Kaguya received it because she ate the Chakra Fruit. Hagoromo possessed the Rinnegan, which honestly cannot be described as a separate dojutsu from the Rinne Sharingan. This dojutsu is the father of all Sharingan, and any dojutsu within the family. Its powers are likely the same as that of the Rinnegan, but still manage to exceed it in the aspect of being capable of casting the Infinite Tsukuyomi. The progenitor of chakra, and likely the progenitor of all dojutsu, the Ten Tails, has been used as a plot device since the conception of the series, with each tailed beast simply being another facet of the Ten Tails. More recently, Kishimoto himself has shown it to be possible for the Ten Tails to take human form and gain a consciousness of its own. And because Kishimoto-sensei has validated one of my previous what-ifs as possible, I thought it best to make a new series to celebrate that, of which this is the second part. Welcome to the Amagi. Before we begin, only 25% of our viewers are subscribed, so if you're a fan of the video, please like and double check if you're subscribed. And with that out of the way, let's get into the video. The sun rose. The air was sweltering with heat. Summer had come and had brought with it a heat wave. It was sticky with sweat, and Naruto's skin had a slight glisten to it. Despite this, he did not mind. Naruto had always loved the summertime, and when the humidity was up, he seemed to enjoy it. Perhaps it was his history as the Ten Tails, a creature not too unlike plant life. All the same, as Konoha was suffering, Naruto was enjoying himself. He opened his eyes, awakening to the song of birds in the shade cast by the overhanging awning before his window. Naruto smiled and almost fell back asleep, but when his mother called up to him, he sat up. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes and got out of bed, grabbing an orange sleeveless shirt and a pair of orange shorts before fitting his shoes on. Today was another day of shinobi work, so he needed to be ready to be out in the elements. Coming down the stairs, he gave his mother a kiss on the cheek and sat by the table. She presented him with a breakfast of champions, which consisted of eggs, bacon, and toast. Enough protein to fuel his muscles and enough carbs to keep the rest of his body supplied during his work, at least until lunch. A glass of juice and some jam on that toast never hurt anybody. Minato was already gone to work, going in early so as to make his commute before the heat index passed by the mid-80s. That, and he also had some work to do. Naruto wolfed his food down as if he were a man starved on a lone island, returning to civilization for the first time in years. As he finished, he pat his tummy and let out a muffled burp. He stood and began grabbing his gear. Kushina would stop him before he left and give him a container of water. "Here, stay hydrated. It's gonna be hotter than the 9th circle out there, so don't have a heat stroke. You remember all the signs?" Naruto nodded. "I remember the signs, Mom. I'm not gonna get heat stroke." "You better not," she said as she went back to her duties. It was when she said things so bluntly that Naruto didn't know whether she was joking or being serious. For all he knew, if he had heat stroke, she would just show up at the hospital or wherever they took him just to beat him black and blue. But all the same, he took it to heart. Naruto stepped out of the house and into the sun, where he began to search his things for sunscreen. He had plenty for himself and the team should they require it, so he continued on. He walked until he reached the place where he would meet up with everyone. Sasuke was there wearing a similar outfit to Naruto, but only the collar was up and it was a deep shade of blue, so dark that one might think it was black. "You really shouldn't have chosen something so dark," Naruto said. "You're just going to attract the sun more." Sasuke shook his head. "This is the attire of my clan. I will wear it no matter how hot the sun becomes," he said, eyes closed. He peeked through his right eye. "You did bring sunscreen though, right?" Naruto smirked. "I did, but only enough for me." Sasuke gulped. "I see." Naruto giggled. Sakura would then appear. She was wearing the same cherry red as always, but where she normally wore a kippah, she had swapped out for a cropped shirt. Sasuke was stunned by it, something Naruto would not let go without adequate teasing. "What's wrong, Sasuke? You're looking a little red. Sun already getting to ya?" Sasuke shot Naruto a true go-to-hell look. Considering the heat though, Naruto assumed he wouldn't have to go far to fulfill that request. But the most surprising thing was when Kakashi showed up. He was wearing his standard gear, which included black pants and a black long-sleeve shirt under a heavy green flak vest. And despite this, there wasn't even a hint of sweat on his brow. "Kakashi-sensei, are you gonna be okay in that?" Sakura asked, clearly distressed by Kakashi's apparent lack of care for his personal safety. Kakashi smiled. "I've had experience fighting in wars and being part of the Anbu. We're taught methods to regulate our own body temperature. It's not always going to be hot or cold on the battlefield, and you need to be prepared when that happens. I'll be sure to add such a technique to your training soon." Naruto then asked the question that everyone was waiting to ask. "What's our mission for the day, Kakashi-sensei?" Kakashi then spoke. "It's a very simple task. Due to the intense heat wave, we need to keep an eye out for civilians that might become faint from the weather. The temperature may change, but Konoha must keep its businesses running. Did you all pack water? Each member of Team 7 displayed their bottle of 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. That's fancy talk for water. Kakashi smiled. Good, that should help us. For the most part, it's the elderly we need to be on the watch out for. So we'll probably be staking out Old Man Hiruzen's home, Naruto called out, causing Sakura and Sasuke to laugh. Kakashi even smirked at this. He shook his head. No, we're going to be on patrol going around the old folks' homes, the merchant district, and near any public places where people generally gather. He showed them their route on the map. I hope you all like to walk, because we're going to be doing plenty of that today. Stay hydrated, but remember to try and save some for anybody we may find. And so Team 7 began their patrol of the village. There were a few elderly people who seemed to be close to fainting, which the team helped into a shaded store and offered water to. There was at least one store owner who seemed to be pretty strong himself, who was certain he'd be fine and continued working anyway until he threw up and nearly passed out. It went to prove that heat stroke could attack anyone at any time if they were trying to push their body past its limits. Kakashi took that moment to warn the man, telling him that your body knows what it needs. Don't ignore it or you'll only end up hurting yourself, or worse. They would take some breaks for lunch, where even Team 7 was starting to get worn out. Sasuke, who was wearing the darkest clothing of them all, had suddenly lost his appetite and was starting to get a headache. So they pulled him under some shade and kept him hydrated, Naruto even going so far as to renege on his joke and give Sasuke some of the extra sunscreen he had kept with him, though it was way beyond too late for his poor red skin. Kakashi extended their break for another 30 minutes and even considered stopping by the hospital, but Sasuke seemed to get a pep back in his step after a few more minutes and managed to get something down. From there, they continued their work, if slightly slower. They managed to make it to the end of the day. When they did, Kakashi told them that tomorrow they would have off, and they would attempt to use that time to train so he could teach them the techniques he had learned. Naruto returned home and made it upstairs, where he took a cool shower to lower his body temperature. He made it downstairs and had supper with his parents. Minato would commend Naruto on his hard work and would tell him that because he did so well that he would let him in on a secret, but only if he didn't tell anyone. Naruto agreed and Minato began to speak. Konoha will be hosting the Chunin exams this year, and I'm considering recommending you and your team to be candidates. Naruto was so excited that he nearly jumped out of his chair. You're serious? Minato nodded. Your team has done well recently and I have confidence that you're ready, but only if your mentor thinks so too. I'll inform him tomorrow. After supper, Naruto hit the hay early, having drained himself from his work that day. The next day was about the same as before, but as Kakashi promised, he began to train them how to use chakra natures to regulate their body temperature. It required precision and chakra control to ensure that they did not tire themselves out, but he got the basics pounded into his students and watched them attempt. During training, Kakashi received a summons from the Hokage, to which Naruto grinned intensely. What is it? Sasuke asked, seeing Naruto's toothy smile. Oh, nothing. It's absolutely nothing, he said, obviously lying to them. Kakashi would stand and proceed to leave, telling his students not to stop until he returned. Making his way to the Hokage's office, he saw Minato standing by the desk. He looked back. Kakashi? The white-haired man stepped closer. It's been a while, master. How are things? Minato looked back at the table. Not as well as I had hoped. Tensions are continuing to rise with Suna. I fear that war is on the horizon. Kakashi looked at the papers that Minato presented to him. What's the issue? Minato then began to explain it to him. Suna is going through an economic drought. Konoha has become the preferred hidden village compared to them, and they're not happy about it. They've been picking fights here and there, and I'm worried that it's going to become something. Kakashi nodded. Is this why you called me? Is there a special mission for me and my team to take in regards to this? Minato shook his head. Actually, no, there's not. I called you here for a different reason, though these reasons are linked. Konoha will soon host the next Chunin exams, and we plan to use this to foster peace with Suna. They've received an invitation. We're hoping that if they get to show off a little and garner a little positive attention, that it may slake their desire to destroy us. I don't think it'll work, a third voice spoke. Kakashi turned around to see a man standing there. Minato motioned his hand towards the third man. Kakashi, I'm sure you remember your old boss, Danzo Shimura. Kakashi nodded. I would say it's a pleasure, but I hate lying to people. Danzo did not seem amused. Didn't quite seem offended either, but definitely not amused. I think we're making a mistake opening our village up to them like this. It's a peace offering, Danzo. An olive branch, Minato said. Surely they can respect that. Danzo shook his head. All this will do is open Konoha up to attack. If they're intent on attacking us, they will attack us. No amount of goodwill can change that. It's best now that we prepare for war. Konoha is one of the strongest shinobi villages, and I believe that now is the time to flaunt that power. Minato shook his head. Power doesn't deter people from fighting. All it does is invite challenge. When we flaunt our power, the entire world will rise up to knock us down a peg, and then it'll be the 4th Shinobi World War. Do you really want to see that happen, Danzo? Danzo sat silently for a moment. With your son, I believe we could easily take on the world. Minato's eyes cut back to Danzo. No, my son is not a weapon to be used. Are you so sure? He carries great power. He nearly subjugated the entire world in one fit of rage during the First Shinobi World War. Whether you wish to admit it or not, if a Shinobi World War does occur, we would have no other choice than to use him to either force submission or destroy those who would not. He may be your son, but think like a Hokage for a moment, Minato. If war does come, how many lives can we save with such a display of power? Minato hated to admit it, but Danzo had a point. But he was not in the mood to discuss such a thing. We're not having this conversation again, Danzo. Not now. You're excused. Danzo stood silently for a moment, expressionless, before sighing and walking out the door. Kakashi turned back to Minato. Keep an eye on him. You can't trust Shimura farther than you can throw him. As Team 7 continued their training, Naruto seemed to manage it well, even making use of fire release and ice release to aid in the process of cooling him down. How did you learn to do the same thing Haku can do? Sakura asked. Naruto shrugged. I don't know, I just can. But you know what? You could probably mimic it. All you would need to do is use wind release and water release. Doing that should allow you to lower the temperature enough to create an ice-style jutsu. Sasuke looked to Naruto. I think you forget that we don't know all 5 basic nature transformations like you do. Kakashi would eventually return to them after his meeting with Minato. Any news, Kakashi-sensei? Naruto would ask in an obvious tone, his teeth showing through a smile. Kakashi looked over at Naruto. You're the Hokage's son, maybe you should tell everyone. Naruto pointed at himself. What, do you believe that there's nepotism in the house of the Hokage? I resent that, dear sir. Kakashi shook his head. The Chunin exams will soon be held in Konoha, and the Hokage has mentioned to me that he believes that you are ready for the exams. Sasuke looked up at Kakashi. Do you think we're ready for the exams? To become Chunin? Kakashi shrugged. I don't see why not. People often forget that the Chunin exams decide who's worthy of becoming a Chunin. I think that if any of my students wish to take the test, they should go for it. If they're worthy, they'll pass and become Chunin. If not, they remain Genin and gain valuable experience. Either way, it's win-win for me. But the only issue is that the whole team must decide to do it if anyone wants to take the test. If you don't all agree, nobody can go. Naruto looked over. I want to take it. What about you, Sasuke? Sasuke shrugged. I'm game. They both looked to Sakura. She thought about it for a moment. Well, it is true that these missions are getting absurdly easy for us, so why not? Let's do it. Kakashi smiled. Good. Sign up for it tomorrow, and then we'll do a little training until the exams start. The whole team agreed. The day after, they signed up for the exams once they were officially announced. The team would then begin to train with their sensei for the duration of time until the Chunin exams were set to begin. As the exams began, Naruto found himself taking a test. A written one. Now, Naruto was not the sharpest spoon in the toolbox, but he did possess Rinne Sharingan, which he proceeded to use to copy off the smartest person in class, which he assumed was Sakura. Of course, points were deducted from Naruto's score when the proctor noticed that Naruto had written Sakura on the top of the page. Naruto quickly erased it and replaced the name with his own. As time went on, Naruto was feeling confident, but then Proctor Marino explained to them that the rest of the test didn't matter at all, and all that mattered was solving this final question. But the catch was, if they got it wrong, they would never again be able to take the exams and would remain a genin for the rest of their lives. Naruto was a bit nervous about this, but was confident at least in the rest of the class's ability to get it right, so he agreed to take the test. Upon doing so, he would then be told that all those who chose to take the test at all displayed incredible guts that would be required to be a shinobi, and due to this, they would all pass. Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura would all celebrate together, but they didn't have long to, as the next stage of the exams would begin, the Forest of Death. They would be tasked with locating an Earth Scroll to match their Heaven Scroll and bringing it to a tower in the center of the forest. As they'd entered the forest, they knew that it was going to be tough. It was still the middle of the heat wave, and this forest would provide pros and cons. The first pro being the shade from the trees would cut down on some of the sunlight that threatened to melt skin from bone. But a con was that even though the sun was hidden behind the canopy of trees, there were rivers flowing through the forest. And with the introduction of water to the heat, it would increase the humidity, which in turn would make it feel even warmer than it was. This was also its own pro, as that same water would provide them a source to keep cool with. And though Team 7 knew that the heat would beat them down so much that they would barely have the energy to do their task, they knew that the same would be true for everyone else, and thus there was no reason to rush to get things finished, as there was likely going to be many who dropped out due to heat stroke and the like. But one good thing was, if everyone had the same ideas about the forest, then it likely meant that most of the contenders would likely camp near the river so they could have relief from the heat. Team 7 would be no exception. It was just too dangerous not to be near water. Should any of them fall ill, they would need the cool water to lower their body temperature to something survivable. They were still learning body temperature regulation from Kakashi, and though they could lessen the risk, it was ever present as the heat was draining on energy and chakra, and should they lose their stamina, it would definitely cause them to suffer. As they set up base, they discussed how to proceed. The plan was to search the area around the river for anyone who left their guard down. As they sought their prey, however, they came across a small group of genin from Konoha who seemed to be in trouble. All that remained was a girl, and she seemed weak. Her 2 male compatriots were already passed out in the river as she was trying to lower their body temperature. It seemed that the enemy that was to be the most active currently was nature itself and the weather that came with it. They felt a little bad for this group and thought that there was no honor in stealing a scroll from an already defeated opponent, so they planned to pass them by, but before they did, they heard a cry for help. Team 7's collective heart had them stop moving. They weren't naive, they expected it to be a very well thought out trap, but Sakura could just tell that the girl crying out to them was being genuine. So they decided to go against their better judgment and return to the group. There, the girl cried out to them to please help, stating that her compatriots had collapsed and were going to die if they didn't get medical help, and that she was too weak to carry them out of the forest alone. And so Team 7 decided to help. Sakura would help the girl up as Naruto and Sasuke would lift her 2 teammates and they'd bring them with them back to the gate. Getting a guard's attention, they had the gate open to help the stranded team back to safety. In return, they'd be granted this team's Scroll of Earth as gratitude for saving their lives. With it, Team 7 made their way to the center of the forest where they checked in and found themselves as the second team to finish. They were told that they'd been beaten hours earlier by a group of genin from Sunagakure. Sakura surmised that this heat played no issue for shinobi from Suna, who were used to working in desert heat and frigid cold all their lives. With that out of the way, the final rounds were to be exhibition matches that pit shinobi against shinobi, and even a team's own members against each other. This was where the true stars would shine. Due to the incredible heat, very few shinobi passed through the forest, and many even needed to be rescued. So there weren't very many shinobi who actually made it. In the exhibitions, Naruto was tasked with fighting against Neji Hyuga, who Naruto would manage to surpass due to his Rinne Sharingan surpassing the Byakugan in almost everything. Sakura fought with Ino, and it ended in a draw, and Sasuke fought with Gaara, which led to Gaara's complete and utter mental breakdown upon being wounded. Naruto and Sasuke would follow Gaara, who would use his magnet release to defend himself, but he was no match for the team. Don't forget, Gaara does not possess Shukaku since that part of the Ten Tails was never split off. But while that occurs, both Rasa and Orochimaru face off against Minato and Hiruzen. During this battle, Orochimaru displays his pilfered Mangekyo Sharingan, and even manages to summon Hashirama Senju and his brother Tobirama. During this battle, both Orochimaru and Rasa are killed, but in return, Hiruzen is gravely wounded, and Minato falls into a coma. Despite everything, Naruto lets Gaara and the Sand siblings escape with a warning about harming his friends. Team 7 would return to the village where they'd be informed about what happened. Naruto rushes to the hospital where he finds Kushina standing outside a hospital room, a worried look upon her face. Naruto comes up to her. "Is Dad alright?" he asks. She looked down at Naruto for a moment before returning her gaze to her wounded husband. "I don't know. He was hurt really badly. Hiruzen was hurt as well, but he's alert." Naruto feels worry in his heart over this. When Minato is settled, Naruto and Kushina are allowed to enter. Naruto's heart sinks when he sees the condition that his father's in. So many wires, so many tubes. His father was on a ventilator to help him breathe, and his chest possessed the taped-on nodes for the heart monitor, which was also feeding information directly to the head doctor in the hospital. Minato was receiving the best care possible, but even with all of this, the fragility of life struck him like a sledgehammer, and he recalled something he had never witnessed, at least not in this life. For a moment, looking at the face of his father, Naruto thought he saw the face of Hashirama Senju. "Dad," he whispered in a low tone. All those emotions came flooding back, and Naruto dashed out the door. He was remembering something. Hashirama Senju's death, the look on Mito's face, the loss of the Sage of Six Paths. He was remembering everything. Kushina attempted to stop Naruto, but didn't. She watched him run off, unable to leave Minato's side. As Naruto made it outside, he fell to his knees and looked up at the moon. He seemed to recall this feeling before. There had been a time when he looked up at the moon and the moon looked back, but not today. Today it was a pale blue color, almost white. Its light cast down upon him solemnly. The village had been attacked and power was out for a large portion of the village. Naruto wandered the streets, lost in his own head, memories spilling open to him. In but a moment, nearly 1,000 years worth of experiences were poured into his mind. By the time he looked up, he realized that he was home. He had somehow walked all the way back on his own. Perhaps it was instinct. He stepped inside, finding the door already unlocked. He flipped the switch, but no lights turned on. They too must have been affected by the blackout. Naruto walked up the steps of his family home toward his bedroom where he planned to spend the rest of the night. But as he stepped into his room to rest, he felt a burlap bag pulled down over his head, as arms wrapped around his and pulled him off his feet. Naruto attempted to fight back, but it was to no avail. He heard murmurs and whispers, but had no idea what was happening. He felt himself dragged upstairs and into another threshold. He was thrown onto the ground. When he managed to get up, he removed the burlap hood from his face and looked to see an elderly man with a cane. Naruto looked at him blankly for a moment. Upon seeing his chin and noticing the X-shaped scar, he spoke. "Danzo? Danzo Shimura?" Danzo raised a brow for a moment. "You remember me?" Naruto nodded. "I do. You were one of my first friends, you and Hiruzen both." Danzo sighed. "If you remember me as your friend, then you'll do as I command. Cast an Infinite Tsukuyomi upon the land of wind." Naruto seemed confused. "Why?" Danzo was silent for a moment. "Just do it, for old time's sake." Naruto shook his head. "No, I can't. I won't. Not until you tell me what's going on." Danzo sighed. "Over the past many months, Suna and Konoha's relationship has been shaky at best. They've threatened war more times than I care to mention. And today, what happened at the exams? That was an attack. A coordinated assault by both Suna and Otogakure. Their goal was to destroy us." "And what are you planning to do?" Naruto asked. Danzo remained silent. "Danzo, what are you planning to do?" "This was an act of war, Naruto. We will strike back. We will end the war before it even begins. We'll show the world what happens if you mess with us." Naruto shook his head. "I can't just cast the Infinite Tsukuyomi over a certain group of people. I can defend Konoha from it with my truth-seeking orbs, but I can't protect anyone else. If I cast this genjutsu, it'll go over the whole world, not just Suna." Danzo's grip on his cane grew tighter. "Then let it be a warning to the rest of the world. We can and will use force to defend ourselves. Overwhelming force. You'll make enemies of everyone. You'll destroy us," Naruto shouted. "You sound like Minato right now. Cooperate with me and this will be a painless process." "And if I refuse?" Naruto asked. Danzo shook his head with a sigh. "Then I'm afraid that we will need to take more drastic measures." Danzo snapped his fingers. Suddenly, the Anbu who were inside the room with him made a move to grab Naruto. Naruto looked up at Danzo with terror. "What are you going to do?" "Only what is necessary," Danzo said as he began to weave hand signs. Naruto recognized them as an Uzumaki-style sealing ritual. Danzo was planning to seal Naruto within him. Naruto shook his head and activated his Rinne Sharingan. He let loose a blast of pressure through the diva path and knocked people away. He rushed out the door. Danzo managed to stand. He looked out at the men. "What are you doing? Don't just stand there. Get after him." Naruto ran from the room and began to go up the stairs. He knew that if he tried going out the front door, he would just leave himself open to interception. He needed to get away and limit the places that they could get to him from. As Naruto jumped from one floor within the stairwell to the next, he looked to see the Anbu running up the walls at a slanted angle, jumping from ground to wall to ceiling, making progress and catching up. Naruto utilized wood release to create a barrier to hopefully stop them, but only managed to buy himself a little time. He made it to the roof as the Anbu cut through the vines Naruto left behind. They followed Naruto to the roof where he stood on the edge of the building and looked back. Naruto saw them and panicked. He then jumped from the roof of the Hokage's residence and began rushing from rooftop to rooftop. He was running the scenario through his mind. Where could he go? What could he do to get away? He had considered running to the hospital to get away, but with both Minato and Hiruzen out of action, the leaders of the village were the council. And given that they were now possibly at war with Tsunagakure, the chances were that Naruto would in some way become a weapon to strike back at Suna with, and that meant that his display of strength would threaten the world's balance. The village would agree with Danzo. Was there anywhere in the village that was safe? Naruto thought about it. The Uchiha, he thought to himself. Dad and the Uchiha are close. They'll defend me until Dad wakes up. As Naruto jumped and began to alter course, he was tackled out of the air by one of the Anbu operatives. He fell through an alleyway, bouncing off a cloth awning and hitting the ground. The Anbu began to surround him. Naruto stood and pulled a kunai. "No, I will not partake in this." "You have no choice," one of the agents said. You will cooperate or you'll be sealed away. They rushed him and began to attack Naruto. Naruto defended himself rather well. All of his fighting experience seemed to rush back into him from his time as a veteran of the First Shinobi World War. And though his body seemed to lag due to not being as in shape as he previously had been, he could still move, muscle memory seeming to be jogged into these new cells that made up his body. He did his best not to kill anyone, but probably did manage to give quite a few concussions. Before he could continue on, however, he was suddenly captured by what felt like chakra chains. He looked back to see that Danzo had grabbed him and was pulling him back toward him. I'm sorry it had to be this way, Naruto. Naruto shook his head. Can't you see that this will turn into another Shinobi World War? Don't you care? All that matters to me is the safety and security of this village, even if it means starting a world war. Any who would side with Suna side against us. Maybe this war is just what we need to foster peace in this war-torn world. Maybe if we show them how futile it is to resist, how much blood will be paid just by threatening us, nobody will ever face us again. Naruto fell down to his hands and knees, the skin under his nails starting to bleed as he dug his fingers into the dirt to stop himself from being dragged into Danzo's body. Danzo, this is not the kind of peace the world deserves. It's the only peace the world can handle, Danzo fired back. Naruto almost lost his grip. My father will never stand for this, he shouted. If your father gets in the way, then I'll ensure he never wakes up. Naruto's eyes widened as he said that. He roared in rage as a spike of wood shot from his back, striking Danzo. The chains shattered. Naruto stood up and turned around in anger to see Danzo had been impaled through his chest. The old man coughed out blood and fell to the ground. Naruto's wrathful gaze softened as his Rinne Sharingan returned to sky blue irises, as he ran over to hold the elderly man. Danzo, I'm so sorry. The elderly man rested in Naruto's arms. Naruto tried to stop the bleeding but found his hands covered in the thick red fluid. Tears began to form in his eyes as he knew what he had done. Danzo, why did you make me do this? Danzo took a deep breath and struggled with the pain. Circumstances. Danzo saw Naruto's tears. You haven't changed at all, have you? I bet I surprised you, didn't I? Naruto attempted to smile through his tears, though this was only half successful. He nodded. You've changed a lot. What happened to you? The world happened to me, Naruto, Danzo said. This world, it's a cruel place. When you perished, the world continued to spin on without you, like you never existed. And it hurt for the world to forget you, to forget Hashirama Senju. The war eventually ended, but a second one began not long thereafter. And even more people died, including our mentor and your uncle, Tobirama. Hiruzen was named Hokage after, and I was tasked with being his supporting shadow, to ensure that the village would be safe. The second war ended and a third began. A never-ending cycle, Naruto. It never ends. Whether we start the fourth Shinobi World War or not, the war will come. There's no stopping it. I thought if we did it on our terms, we might be able to stop it from happening again. Break the cycle. He coughed more blood as Naruto held onto him. Danzo. Danzo looked up at Naruto again. Naruto? Naruto nodded. Danzo continued. You're alive. Did you manage to defeat the Kinkaku force? Tears streamed down Naruto's cheeks. Yes, Danzo, I defeated them. Danzo smiled. I'm so happy. I was afraid I'd never see you again. I'm glad you came home. Danzo's head lowered to rest on Naruto's shoulder as he let out one last breath. Naruto shook him a bit. Danzo? Danzo! Naruto's lip quivered as his tears continued to roll down his cheek. He sat there, cradling the body of the man who had once been one of his best friends. All he could do was cry. He looked up at the moon as it continued to gaze down upon him and wondered why his life hurt so much. Why did love die? Why was it that every time you opened your heart, it just ended up scarred? Why was I born? He asked, gazed towards the heaven as if hoping that God might answer him. Why did you create me? Just to suffer? He clutched his friend's body closely. Why can't I just be free from this pain? Why must I always be reborn? Why must I always watch those I love pass? Why? Naruto took a long time to think about these things. Gaara had returned to Sunagakure and had been given a lot of time to contemplate what Naruto had told him. He wasn't as hostile toward the concept as he once was, being trained as a weapon by his father due to their unparalleled control over sand and iron with magnet release. But now he began to wonder if every belief he had held against Konoha was just propaganda. But by this time it was too late. Rasa was dead, and Suna blamed Konoha. Despite Gaara's own attempts to reverse the damage done, it seemed that the world would continue to march towards war. A new era of terror and bloodshed was about to dawn, and it would see every man, woman, and child swept up in it. It would soon begin. All the while, Suna gathered its allies and laid out its strategies. The future was bleak, the Fourth Shinobi World War. And that's where I plan to stop it for the day. What did you think? Naruto being the Ten Tails provides us with a new dilemma of immortality. So many characters and media seek it, but the issue with immortality in a corrupt world is that while you may never die, you're forced to watch everyone you love slowly wither away before your eyes. Some may consider that a fate worse than death, loneliness. And now, once more, war will sweep the world, and Team 7 will be caught up in it. But I suppose that's a story for another day. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a like, and if you're excited to see more content like this, make sure you click that subscribe button, and ring the bell so YouTube knows to notify you when more content like this releases. Until next time, peace.